The ripples of Superman's death continue in this week's Superman and Lois as the Kents continue to deal with the loss of their father and husband. Lois wrestles with the responsibility to inform the world that Superman has died, wrestling with the idea whether it's right to post an article detailing the Man of Steel's death. Now I really like that she is wrestling with this idea, like, yeah, she has responsibility as a reporter to report the news, and something like this is the news, but then it's also her husband who died, and she kind of has to separate, the work life from the home life, and I like that she is very much wrestling with that fact before coming to the decision that the world also owns Superman as well. She doesn't get a monopoly on him. The world deserves to know that their protector is not there to help them. This sets off the first of two big twists of the episode as John and Jordan learn of their mother's article, with John being very angry that she would do something like that, as well as being angry at his brother for, as he sees it, being the cause that their father is now dead, seeing as the heart was destroyed by Lex. After taking out his anger on a wall in the farmhouse basement, Jonathan's powers suddenly activate and come all at once, immediately putting him on the same level as his brother. This whole sequence is handled just so well by both actors, none more so than Michael Bishop, who plays Jonathan, and he just knocked it out of the park, running through all of these different emotions all at once, anger, fear, guilt, all of these great emotions that he should be feeling in this moment of weakness with, his dad being dead, everything in his life being turned upside down, and I like that it all just comes pouring out in the form of these powers. I said in my review for the first two episodes I was really hoping they are going to get him more involved in the plots, since his plots in past seasons have always been, or have always felt like kind of B plots and then get somewhat tied into the A plot at some point near the end. But I like now he has powers, there's like no excuse to have him sit out. He can now, help out in all of these different problems, and I'm really intrigued to see what they do with him going forward now that he has powers, especially now because Jordan isn't too happy that his brother has powers and begins feeling even more alienated than ever before, especially once his mother learns that he has powers and she tells Sam about it, and Sam is very gung-ho on wanting Jonathan to kind of fill in for his father, being that he is a natural leader, he's got a job as a fireman, he knows what he needs to do, and so he feels like he's being kind of pushed to the side and kind of forgotten about. Like his mother, Jordan is really being put through the ringer from these first three episodes. He saw his father get killed by this big monster, he then tried to help out with his powers and it didn't go as planned, and then it led to, as they believe, their father actually properly dying at the hands of Lex Luthor. All of this stuff, and of course he feels very responsible for all of this, and it doesn't help that he also suffers from social anxiety disorders and stuff like that, so it makes him extra vulnerable, and it's a vulnerability that Lex Luthor soon exploits as he turns up at the farm. And I don't know how the Kents haven't put some sort of thing in place that stops people from just wandering onto the farm. So many people just turn up at the farm uninvited, but it turns out that he has Lois's recording of the call that she had with him in the previous episode, where she had to choose between Jonathan and Jordan and who would live, and of course she chose Jonathan. And now Lois's explanation is that of course she knew Jordan was okay, he had powers. At that time, Jonathan didn't, so she wanted the son without powers to survive, whereas she knew Jordan could handle himself, but Jordan doesn't see it that way. Jordan sees it as, his mother choosing a favorite. And I like that that's what Lex is doing. He's not, attacking them in a power armor with a kryptonite ray gun or something like that. He's messing with their heads mentally. And I like that he's not outrightly hurting them, he's just like messing with their heads and getting them to turn on each other. And I like that his reasonings are almost kind of rooted in jealousy, and I like that it's not a jealousy of Superman, saving the city or anything like it usually is, this guy coming along and taking all his thunder and everything. It's really rooted in the fact that Lois Lane, and then as he learned last issue who Superman is, that Superman and Clark have a loving family, while he had his ripped away from him when he was put in jail, and that's why he's so desperate to find his daughter. It's a thoroughly more interesting dynamic for Lex to deal with than, oh, he just wants to kill Superman because he's an alien who stole his thunder, and it's so much more interesting. Now, throughout the entire episode, we have a bunch of Sam Lane focused flashbacks, like how we had in the first 2 episodes, stuff with Lois and Clark and Lois learning of Clark's secret and all that sort of stuff. Now we're focusing on Sam, and we see from when he learns that Clark is Superman, and a fantastic reveal that reminds me of the change that Chris Reeve does in the Superman movie, where he goes from Clark to Superman and then back to Clark in Lois's apartment. And then we also get some wedding stuff with Sam just not really interested in Clark marrying his daughter. He doesn't approve of it because of who Clark is, but not in some sort of like, ooh, he's an alien sort of way, but the way he sees Clark is like he's like got a responsibility to the world, and he can't have a family, much like he's kind of projecting himself onto Clark. And I like that Clark doesn't believe in that sort of stuff and will actually rather be with the woman he loves because that's what he wants, and that's what he knows Lois wants as well. I quite like that he isn't like bending to Sam's wants. It's really interesting, and it kind of makes me wish we got to see a bit more of that throughout the show, and understand why they didn't get to see it because we have to keep plots moving, but that stuff is just so interesting to me. Even more so with them doing it with Sam Lane, a character who's never been really an overly complicated man, and that's when he isn't dead, which in the comics he's been dead for about 2 or 3 years now. Flashbacks strengthen the bond Lois and her father have, and also shows Sam how much Clark loves his daughter, which ties directly into Sam's final plotline for the episode, as this is the last time we're seeing the character, last time Dylan Walsh is going to be playing the character in the season. As while working at the DoD, Sam has been trying to find a donor heart for Superman, intending on injecting Bruno Mannheim's serum that he developed for his wife in order to make it compatible with Clark, since the serum was derived from Superman's blood, and he figures if he can get a heart to work with this serum, then it should work in Superman's body. With Superman down though, John Henry and Natasha Irons agree to join Sam and help out with his mission and protect the world, but as it turns out, Lex has put a mole in Sam's team, and the man reveals himself to the General in order to get the information on Lex's daughter for the villain, revealing that Lex has taken his family hostage and will kill them if he doesn't do it, and in the struggle, Sam is shot in the process. With minutes left to live, Sam ends up injecting himself with the serum and setting John Henry and Natasha up with a very important mission, which we'll get back to a little later on. John Henry and Natasha spring into action when Doomsday comes for Sam, but of course they are easily beaten by the monster, and Doomsday ends up killing Sam in front of Lois and her sons. I really have to applaud the show for not shying away from the violence, and it's not violence for the sake of violence to make it, gritty and grim. It serves the drama and builds it out really nicely. There's just this immense weight to it happening right on the screen in front of you here. And Sam's death isn't in vain though, and it's all part of his plan actually, as thanks to being injected with the serum that he shot himself up with after being shot in the stomach, his heart can actually be used to bring Superman back. John Henry takes him to the fortress and helps the hologram Lara with the procedure, and the episode closes out with the reveal that it worked and Clark awakens. However, there is a little caveat to that, as Lara reveals that it is going to take a while for Clark to get better, and he might actually not get fully better because he's just got like a human heart in him now. So it makes me wonder, and my theory is that I wonder if this is how they're going to get Superman to age, because obviously Superman cannot age. He does, but he ages very slowly, and I wonder if this is him getting away so that he gets to spend his life with Lois and his family without having to worry about him outliving them. I think that would be a really cool way to do it. And also I have to imagine there's probably going to be some sort of handicap where like the heart will eventually get strong enough to where he can be at full strength, but he won't be enough to defeat Doomsday. So both his sons and probably Steel and Starbright have to also help out as well. And I think that's probably where they're going to go with it. I don't know about the aging thing. It does make sense to me, but I think it's probably going to be a sort of thing where we get to see everyone sort of team up to defeat Doomsday. I am surprised though, after killing him off in the first episode, that they are going to just bring him back by the end of episode 3, into episode 4, I do think there's probably going to be, as I said, some sort of caveat where he'll have to stay in that pod for quite a while. But I like that it's not just going to be him, getting back up, maybe throwing on, the black solar suit to recharge and heal him and off on his way. I like that it was his father-in-law's heart that brought him back to life, and there's symbolism there. Lois had won Clark's heart when they started dating, getting into a relationship, and Sam felt like that was taking her away from him. But now that Sam is literally inside Clark now, he will always be there with his daughter and will always be there with Superman, protecting the world even in death, and it's just so fantastic. So there is a lot to like about this episode, like so much to like about this episode. But one thing I did notice about this episode more so than the first two was that reduced budget that we were told was going to affect this season. Obviously it's because we haven't been getting the usual full cast. They've been ducking in and out of episodes. Lana and her family are nowhere to be seen in this episode, even though they're in the last two, and that's because they're not going to be in every episode. Same with Natasha and John Henry Irons. They're not going to be in every episode, but this is their episode. And it does feel a lot of the budget was used for those Doomsday fights in the first two episodes, since they look really great, and it means there were some pretty questionable things going on in this episode. Now Doomsday still looks great. In the shots that he's used very sparingly, and he just looks really cool, but it's the other effects, and it's real obvious in the really early John Henry Natasha scene on the farm, which I want to say was done in a green screen studio with kind of matched lighting, since the lighting is very harsh, especially on John Henry. You kind of notice the outline of him when they're sitting in the back of that truck. And I get it, schedules, you couldn't have everyone on set at the same time, budgets, all that sort of stuff. I get it, it happens. It's just really, really strange to do a scene like that, against a green screen and make it so look like kind of a rush job. And while seeing stuff like that does kind of disappoint me, it doesn't ruin the show for me. The crew still do an excellent job with what they had, and you can tell that every cent they were given for the budget is out there on the screen. They have a love for this, you can tell, and everyone is still acting their asses off, and that's where it really pays off. The acting in this show is just leagues beyond what we see in any of the other CW shows. Everyone brings their A game, especially in this episode, from characters like Sam Lane and his daughter Lois, Dylan Walsh and Elizabeth Tulloch. Dylan, especially since this is his final episode, he just gets wonderful scene after scene, and it's all culminates in his final scene. It feels very much like Tony Stark's final scenes in Endgame, where he's like a hologram and he's talking to his daughter, and it just tugs at your heartstring about how he finally gets it. He finally gets what Clark wanted and everything, and saw with Lois, and he's going to be there fighting with them, even if he's not actually there. It's just so good and so meaningful, and just hits real hard, especially after the 4 seasons we've got with this character and just the amazing characterization the writers did with him. The final season of Superman and Lois continues to go places I had no idea it could and would go. I adored everything the show did with Sam Lane this episode, really fleshing out his character and building him out in a way that shows the hope Superman and his family can inspire in others, even someone as grumpy and set in their ways as Sam Lane. With Jonathan getting his powers and the hint of Superman maybe coming back sooner rather than later, I can't wait to see what other twists and turns this show throws at its characters as we enter the middle half of the season. I am going to give this episode a 9 out of 10.